sometimes it works. He's trying to tell us something. He's communicating in some strange way. Inez. The name reminds us of Isabella. He's obsessed with Isabella. You should see the apartment in Cambridge. Is Inez a substitute for Isabella? Is Atlantic City a substitute for Laguna Beach? Has he brought Isabella home? Why bring Isabella home? He went on and on like that. Wild hunches, free association, insecurity, fear, unbearable frustration. As far as I could tell, nothing worthwhile was said all day and late into the night, but who could really tell? Pierce didn't try to make any further contact. There were no more voice messages. That surprised us a little. Kyle was afraid he had moved on, and that he would keep moving until he drove us completely insane. 6 of us stayed in the field office throughout the night and into the early morning. We slept in our clothes, on chairs, tables, and on the floor. I paced inside the office and occasionally outside on the glittery, fog-laden boardwalk. As a last desperate resort, I bought a bag of Frailinger's saltwater taffy and tried to get sick on my stomach. What kind of logic system is he using? Mr. Smith is his creation, his Mr. Hyde. What is Smith's mission? Why is he here, I wondered, occasionally talking to myself as I strolled the mostly deserted boardwalk. Inez is Isabella. It couldn't be that simple. Pierce wouldn't make it simple for us. Inez is not Isabella. There was only one Isabella, so why does Pierce keep killing again and again? I found myself at the corner of Park Place and Boardwalk, and that finally brought a smile. Monopoly. Another kind of game. Is that it? I wandered back to the FBI field office and got some sleep, but not nearly enough. A few hours at most. Pierce was here. So was Mr. Smith. A flat, still sandy, still meadowy region. A superb range of ocean beach. Miles and miles of it. The bright sun, the sparkling waves, the foam, the view. A sail here and there in the distance. Walt Whitman had written that about Atlantic City 100 years before. His words were inscribed on the wall of a pizza and hot dog stand now. Whitman would have been stricken to see his words on such a backdrop. I went by myself for another stroll on the Atlantic City boardwalk, around 10 o'clock. It was Saturday, and so hot and sunny that the eroding beach was already dotted with swimmers and sunbathers. We still hadn't found Inez. We didn't have a single clue. We didn't even know who she was. I had the uncomfortable feeling that Thomas Pierce was watching us, or that I might suddenly come upon him in the dense, sweltering crowds. I had my pager just in case he tried to contact us at the field office. There was nothing else to be done right now. Pierce, Mr. Smith, was in control of the situation and our lives. A madman was in control of the planet. It seemed like it anyway. I stopped near the Steeplechase Pier in the Resorts Casino Hotel. People were playing under the hot sun and the high rolling surf. They seemed to be enjoying themselves and didn't appear to have a care in the world. How nice for them. This was the way it should be, and it reminded me of Janny and Damon, my own family, and of Christine. She desperately wanted me to leave this job, and I couldn't blame her. I didn't know if I could walk away from police work, though. I wondered why that was so. Physician, heal thyself. Maybe I would someday soon. As I continued to walk along the boardwalk, I tried to convince myself that everything that could be done to catch Pierce was being done. I passed the Frailingers and a James candy store, and the old peanut shop where a costumed Mr. Peanut was stumbling about in the mid-90-degree heat. I had to smile as I saw Ripley's Believe It or Not museum up ahead, where you would see a lock of George Washington's hair and a roulette table made of jelly beans. No, I could not believe it. I didn't think anyone on the crisis team could. But here we were. I was jolted out of my thoughts by the beeper vibrating against my leg. I ran to a nearby phone and called in. Pierce left another message. Kyle and Sampson were already out on the boardwalk. Pierce was near the steel pier. He claimed that Inez was with him. He said we could still save them. Pierce specifically said, them. I shouldn't have been running around like this. My side began to throb and hurt like hell. I had never been out of shape like this, not in my life, and I didn't like the feeling. I hadn't felt so vulnerable and relatively helpless before. Finally, I realized, I'm actually afraid of Pierce, and of Mr. Smith. By the time I got near the steel pier, my clothes were dripping wet, and I was breathing hard. I pulled off my sports shirt and waded out into the crowd bare-chested. I pushed my way past the old-style jitneys and the newer step vans, past tandem bikes and joggers. I was taped and bandaged and must have looked like an escapee from a local ER. Even so, it was hard to stand out on a beach like the one at Atlantic City. An ice cream man hauling a box on his shoulder cried out, "Hitch your tongue to a sleigh ride! Get your fudgy-wudgies here!" Was Thomas Pierce watching us and laughing? He could be the ice cream man, or anyone else in this frenetic mob scene. I cupped my hands over my eyes and looked up and down the beach. I spotted policemen and FBI agents wading into the crowd. There must have been at least 50,000 sunbathers on the beach. I could faintly hear the electronic bells from the slot machines in one of the nearby hotels. Inez, Atlantic City. Jesus. A madman on the loose near the famous steel pier. I looked for Sampson or Kyle, but didn't see either of them. I searched for Pierce and for Inez and for Mr. Smith. I heard a loud voice, and it stopped me in my tracks.
This is the FBI.
The voice boomed over a loudspeaker, probably from one of the hotels, or maybe a police hookup.
This is the FBI,
Kyle Craig announced.
Some of our agents are on the beach now. Cooperate with them, and also with the Atlantic City Police. Do whatever they ask. There's no reason for undue concern. Please cooperate with police officers.
The huge crowd became strangely quiet. Everyone was staring around, looking for the FBI. No, there was no reason for undue concern. Not unless we actually found Pierce. Not unless we discovered Mr. Smith operating on somebody in the middle of this breach crowd. I made my way toward the famous amusement pier, where, as a young boy, I had actually seen the famous diving horse. People were standing out in the low surf, just looking toward shore. It reminded me of the movie Jaws. Thomas Pierce was in control here. A black Bell Jet helicopter hovered less than 70 yards from shore. A second helicopter came into view from the northeast. It swept in close to the first, then fluttered away in the direction of the Taj Mahal hotel complex. I could make out sharpshooters positioned in the helicopters. So could Pierce, and so could the people on the beach. I knew there were FBI marksmen in the nearby hotels. Pierce would know that, too. Pierce was FBI. He knew everything we did. That was his edge, and he was using it against us. He was winning. There was a disturbance up closer to the pier. People were pushing forward to see, while others were moving away as fast as they could. I moved forward. The beach crowd's noise level was building again. En Vogue played from somebody's blaster. The smell of cotton candy and beer and hot dogs was thick in the air. I began to run toward the steel pier, remembering the diving horse and Lucy the elephant from Margate. Better times long time ago. I saw Sampson and Kyle up ahead. They were bending over something. Oh, God. Oh, God, no. Inez, Atlantic City. My pulse raced out of control. This was not good. A dark-haired teenage girl was sobbing against an older man's chest. Others gawked at a dead body which had been clumsily wrapped in beach blankets. I couldn't imagine how it had gotten here, but there it was. Inez, Atlantic City. It had to be her. The murdered woman had long, bleach blonde hair and looked to be in her early 20s. It was hard to tell now. Her skin was purplish and waxy. Her eyes had flattened because of the loss of fluid. Her lips and nail beds were pale. He had operated on Inez. The ribs and cartilage had been cut away, exposing her lungs, esophagus, trachea, and heart. Inez sounds like Isabella. Pierce knew that. He hadn't taken out Inez's heart. The ovaries and fallopian tubes were neatly laid beside the body. The tubes looked like a set of earrings and a necklace. Suddenly, sunbathers were pointing to something out over the ocean. I turned and I looked up, shading my eyes with one hand. A prop plane was lazily making its way down the shoreline from the north. It was the kind of plane you rented for commercial messages, most of the messages on 40-foot banners, hyped hotels, local bars, area restaurants, and casinos. A banner waved behind a sputtering plane that was getting closer and closer. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was another message.
Mr. Smith is gone for now. wave goodbye.
Early the next morning, I headed home to Washington. I needed to see the kids, needed to sleep in my own bed, to be far, far away from Thomas Pierce and his monstrous creation, Mr. Smith. Inez had turned out to be an escort from a local service. Pierce had called her to his room at Ballas Park Place. I was starting to believe that Pierce could only find intimacy only with his victims now. But what else was driving him to commit these horrifying murders? Why Inez? Why the Jersey Shore? I had to escape for a couple of days, or even a few hours if that was all I could get. At least we hadn't already gotten another name, another location to rush off to. I called Christine from Atlantic City and asked her if she wanted to have dinner with my family tonight. She said yes. She'd like that a lot. She said she'd be there with bells on. That sounded unbelievably good to me. The best medicine I could imagine for what ailed me. I kept the sound of her voice in my head all the way home to Washington. She would be there with bells on. Damon, Jenny, and I spent a hectic morning getting ready for the party. We shopped for groceries at Citronella and then at the Giant. Veni Vidi Visa. I had almost put Pierce, Mr. Smith, out of my head, but I still had to wear my semi-automatic in my ankle holster to go grocery shopping. At the Giant, Damon scattered on ahead to find some RC Cola and tortilla chips. Jenny and I had a chance to talk. I knew she was dying to buzz. I can always tell. She has a fine, overactive imagination, and I couldn't wait to hear what was on her little mind. Jenny was in charge of pushing the shopping cart, and the middle handle of the cart was just above her eye level. She stared at the immense array of cereals in our aisle, looking for the best deals. Nana Mama had taught her the fine art of grocery shopping, and she could do most of the math in her head. "Talk to me," I said. "My time is your time. Daddy's home. For today." She sent a hummer right past my ear, brushed me right back from home plate with a high, hard one. "It's not easy being green," I said. It was an old favorite line between us, compliments of Kermit the Frog. She shrugged it off today. No sale. No easy deals. "You and Damon mad at me?" I asked in my most soothing tones. "Tell me the truth, girlfriend." She softened a little. "Oh, it's not so much that, Daddy. You're doing the best you can," she said, and finally looked my way. "You're trying, right? It's just hard when you go away from home. I get so lonely for you. It's not the same when you're away." I shook my head, smiled, and wondered where she got much of her thinking from. Nana Mama swore that Janny has a mind of her own. "You okay with our dinner plans?" I asked, treading carefully. "Oh, absolutely," she suddenly beamed. "That's not a problem at all. I love dinner parties." "Damon, is he okay with Christine coming over tonight?" I asked my confidant. "He's a little scared, 'cause she's the principal of our school, but he's cool, too. You know Damon. He's the man." I nodded. "He is cool. So dinner's not a problem. You're not even a little scared?" Jenny shook her head. "Nope, not because of that. Dinners can't scare me. Dinner is dinner." Man, she was smart, and so subtle for her age. It was like talking to a very wise adult. She was already a poet and a philosopher, too. She was going to be competition for Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison one day. I loved that about her. "Do you have to keep going after him? After this bum, Mr. Smith?" Janny fondly asked me. "I guess you do," she answered her own question. I echoed her earlier line. "I'm doing the best I can." Janny stood up on her tippy toes. I bent down low to her, but not as far as I used to. She kissed me on the cheek, a nice smacker, as she calls the kisses. "You're the bee's knees," she said. It was one of Nana's favorite things to say, and she'd adopted it. "Boo!" Damon peeked around the soda pop aisle at the two of us. His head was framed against the red, white, and blue sea of Pepsi bottles and cans. I pulled Damon close and kissed him on the cheek, too. I kissed the top of his head, held him in a way I would have liked my father to have held me a long time ago. We made a little spectacle of ourselves in the grocery store aisle. Nice spectacle. God, I loved them. And what a continued dilemma it presented. The Glock on my ankle weighed a ton and felt as hot as a poker from a fire. I wanted to take it off and never put the weapon on again. I knew I